This episode is sponsored by DistroKid, and I'll give you more insight as to how they can help your musical journey later in the episode. I've been trying to crack this late 90s, early 2000s sound in the door for a while, and it kind of all came together in the same week. Let's check it out.
Do it like this.
So nu metal was such a huge influence to me growing up. It's what turned me into the hip hop fan I am today. Unlike other rock genres, nu metal often combined scratch DJs and MCs as well as the anchor points that you would find in regular metal. Thanks to bands like Limp Bizkit, Papa Roach, Linkin Park and Slipknot, I was always so switched on to how full and bass weighty the sound was in comparison to other genres at the time. But for such a long time, it was hard to recreate that style in the DAW. Guitars didn't sound very natural, amp designers were limited, and albeit the drums delivered a punch, there was almost no stylistic scratch tools for non-DJs. I'm so pleased to delve into this project with you today because I'm truly excited of where the technology is, and I'm looking forward to creating more like this. If you dig what you hear today, you can download the entire project stems and a nu metal guitar pack over at the Patreon. Let's get started with the guitar. If you're a fan of this channel, it should be no surprise that Ample Sound is found here. It's a wonderful plugin that I write all my guitar parts with, and today I'm using Ample's Metal Hellraiser. With Ample Sound, you can compose both in the piano roll, or you can play entire chords with just one hit of the keys, as we'll see later. But for this first part, I'm composing into the piano roll, and you can see that I'm keeping it real simple, mostly on the C sharp here. So making sure that I make use of the velocities here so we get slightly different kind of dynamics or characteristics of the notes being played. And if you're wondering what these little notes do, they're going to change the performance style of how the note is played. If I set this to the D, you'll get more palm muted. But I'm playing some chords. You can tell that velocity is going to be really important. If these were all maxed out, not going to sound as nice, so I kind of had to dial that in. And then back to our chug in down here. Outside of intros and outros, you're going to want to beef things up at the drop. So utilizing an amp simulator is really going to help out, and I don't think it really gets better than Neural DSP. I'm only just dipping my toe in with this company, but you're sure to see them more frequently on the channel as they pair really well with my current sound selection. These guys offer a terrific 14-day free trial if you want to check out any of their plugins as well. You can see in the top right, you can save your own presets. This one is my own. I've called it New Balance. There's many different archetypes for Neural DSP, and this is the Nolly archetype. But as you'll always find, you get your different parameters along the top, starting off with kind of your pedal board. Our second parameter is our head that sits on top of the amp, and then our EQ. And then this section is my favorite. You can change your microphone position as well as what microphone you're recording with to get a different kind of flavor to this tone. Make sure to subscribe because in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be using Neural DSP to dial in the sounds of Krungbin's new album. If we move the Dynamic 57 to the outside, you get more of like a washed out sound. Inside the ring is something a little bit more bass heavy, which I like. And you start to introduce a lot of treble as we move towards the center of that cone. And then finally, you have some more effects on the end of the chain. And I'm just introducing a little bit of room sound, as you can see with the illumination here. So it's just adding a little bit more realism, which you know I'm all about on this channel. Like I said, we're going to go into more detail in a couple of weeks with Neural DSP. So this is really adding a lot of bass weightiness. We go from here to a really crunchy sound. At the end of the intro, I just make sure that I turn the bypass off for Neural DSP and the EQ. Down one track, I'm copying those notes apart from the higher chords here, keeping it real simple and using the metal raise bass guitar, which is kind of this like metal pop punk bass guitar. It's ace for all of that kind of drop D floppy bottom string stuff. Sounds really nice. I've just done a little bit of light EQ and utility there. Without that, it just sounds like it's got a little bit too much fret noise. but it's still a nice tone. And then underneath that, I have my subs. So you can see with the guitar above, I'm rolling off any lows, and then I'm just keeping all of those lows for the sub so that we have a really pure sine wave and it sounds really full and anchored to our track. And if you've got headphones in, you might just be able to hear that. Combine that with the bass. Now, I previously mentioned that you can use amp or sound with just one note to play the chords. We're using the Metal Eclipse, so we're using the entire Metal series. I come over to Strummer and I turn this option on. And basically, when I hold middle C, it's going to play a chord. And then if I change the notes below that and play that same middle C, I'll get different chords. And then what you can see here is just my strumming pattern. So I basically have this really simple up, down, up, down, up, down pattern. And I'm just playing octaves. F octave, and then the D sharp octave. Really, really simple stuff. And we keep that super high pass with a little bit of phaser just to give it that really washed out feel. So here are my guitars together. That's all inside a group with my BetterHelp device, which is over at the Patreon, which just gives it a little bit of punch. Without that device, it's there, but it's not as present. So it's just a really quick one-stop shop to pull out that kind of like extra punch. Underneath this, it gets really exciting because we have Scratcher. You might have seen over the last couple of weeks on YouTube, this device pop up in your feed if we share kind of like a similar algorithm. Have you seen anything in Ableton like this before in such like a sleek Max for Live kind of package as well? I've included it in the description below. It's available at Gumroad and pay what you want. But I would strongly urge you support this artist for their hard work because it really is a fantastic tool. So it comes with the R and it comes with the Fresh. And they're the easiest to use. I have dropped my own samples in there and maybe that's something I can cover in a future video. You kind of just have to like double time your sample and pitch it down for it to be able to work with the scratch, and you can only use a very short section, but it works really, really well. And then what you need to do is just kind of chop up your patterns. So I use some of the ones that are already available and just make sure that I have different rhythms going on as well as different lengths of notes. So you can see that this one's a little bit before the downbeat, this is a little bit after the downbeat, and they're taking up different note lengths. And that's going to be kind of like your bread and butter to making this sound really, really natural. As soon as you've got that, you've got nu metal. Now, if you haven't seen my one-shot episode yet, it's linked in the top right of the video. I love this device. I'm not going to harp on about this too much because it's already been covered in an episode all of its own. It's in the top right if you want to check it out. But this new plugin from Clevgran has become my go-to for realistic sounding drums. So this is what it's sounding like before I added my BetterHelp device and the color limiter. I have this preset as well as others available at the Patreon if you're using one shot. So we add our BetterHelp. Now it really packs a punch. And I'm making sure that I go with that kind of classic hip hop groove here. Making sure that I've got those little ghost notes that are off the grid. The snare too. Sounding really, really nice. You want to make sure that that's really locked into your bass. And the only thing that I do at the end or at the breakdown of the track is just add a nice sub drop. Sub drop should sound like this. Probably need headphones. And that's going to make it really impactful for when we go back to that high passed guitar. Let's hear that all together one more time.
Do it like this.
So there we have it, guys. Nu metal. I didn't think that we would ever crack it in Ableton, let alone cover it on the channel. But what do you think? Are you going to experiment with this in a genre of your choosing? or never touch it again? Was it helpful? Let me know in the comments below. But don't forget that you can download the project, the stems, and a short nu metal guitar pack over at the Patreon. But before you go, I must tell you about DistroKid. See, oftentimes, especially when I'm up against the deadline, I'll use Distro's Mixia tool. If your track is unmastered, maybe a tad quiet, I often use Mixia to get a dynamic, louder track that has a bit of punch. It's super easy to use and can really make your track pop when you're in a pinch. To get 7% off your first year, use the link in the description below. Thank you so much for swinging by, guys. It's always a pleasure to sit down with you, and I'll catch you next time.